Hey everyone, I'm Brad from Calgary.
This is Sean from Cambridge, Ontario.
I'm Terry from Cornwall, Ontario.
Hey, this is Larry from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, and you're listening to the Towing Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Towing Life Podcast, where the ditches are deep, the trucks are loaded, but the drivers are not. I am your host, TowManG, and as usual, I'm joined by my co-host, friend, and former co-worker, the man with very strong opinions, Mr. PlainGuy.
What is going on, G? What is going on?
2 weeks in a row, we're uploading a podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, surprisingly
with the chaos that has gone on and everything else in the business that we've had, we've still managed to do this. So it is nice to be back on somewhat of a routine. Yeah. You have gotten me up extremely bright and early on a Sunday where I could still be sleeping, relaxing, and enjoying a bit of my weekend in order to do this. But as usual, I will work to accommodate your fragile
Well,
state
I'm
of
sorry.
mind.
I got things planned for the rest of the day. I got my dad coming over for Father's Day because we're recording this on Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to any of you fathers out there.
Absolutely.
We're making homemade burgers and it's going to be good. I moved all his shit into my cold room last weekend. So that was his Father's Day present. So he got out of a $400 every 28 day storage unit because they do it every 28 days just to people. Probably should bleep that out because we're still fairly early on in the episode, but whatever. And yeah, so it's going to be a good day. So hence why we have to record at currently 8:53 in the morning.
As G said, welcome back to another episode of the Towing Life Podcast, episode 140. As we continue to count upwards and onwards moving forward with the show, it is a great time to mention your comments, questions, concerns, opinions, lack of opinions, or just pure stupidity is always welcome on this show. So where can you reach out to us and how can you find us? It is pretty simple. You can head over to our website at www.towinglife.ca. You can find us on Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast, or you can email us directly at thetowinglife@gmail.com. Don't forget, if you're watching over on the YouTube side, you can always hit the like and subscribe and comment down below. I haven't checked over recently to see any of the YouTube comments. G could maybe let us know if there's been some negative, positive, and all of those good things. By the way that he's laughing, I'm assuming there's some comments that might not like. So yeah, that being said, we've got a lot of good stuff to cover this week. We're going to go over some stories from G, some road trip stories from myself, and couple stupid photos that we tend to find on the interwebs, as we like to call it.
So the YouTube comments are filled by Joe. He has taken it upon himself to make sure we have an abundance of comments.
Thanks, Joe.
We've had 5 comments from Joe over the past 11 days. No one else has commented. So
Joe just having a straight up monologue in the comments section.
He is.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
He said, "Wow," meaning to the tow world again. I'm assuming that's when he first started watching the video. They're back was a separate comment. I think those could be one comment, Joe, but I appreciate you. Thanks for the engagement. Johnny 5 was a comment.
Yes, Johnny 5 is going back to Short Circuit, the movie reference we were making that you didn't understand, the laser lips comment. Yeah,
laser lips. Okay. Perfect. Up to speed. And 4 days ago, he says the predatory towing on the tractor trailers, I believe, was in Kentucky or Tennessee, and had a lot of truckers. And a lot of truckers are not driving there anymore. They would park in truck stop where they were told to park, and the towing company would tow him while they were sleeping in the rigs. You need some commas in there, Joe. That is according to the news article that I read, as far as I followed through with.
Okay. That now, Joe, that is a different thing. Okay. So that is there was an issue where I want to say, I'm going to look it up quickly, that not Tennessee or Kentucky, as he said, had to come out with a law that you could not boot or tow a vehicle with a person inside of it or something. And there was a lot of laughs on that, like as if this actually has to be written as a law, but it was true. Because what happened was there was a story out of somewhere, some southern state, I don't know where exactly, where they were towing private parking vehicles with truckers sleeping in them. Which obviously is a no-no. But how do you not wake up while your truck's getting hooked up? But besides the fact,
Well, they'd probably just be like, okay, I'll just sit in here because then it's a lawsuit. I can sue you for moving my truck
no,
while I'm
either
sleeping
that
in
or
it.
they had the really good sleep, right? Like they were deep into dodo land and didn't feel it getting tilted up in the air or anything. But yeah, so that was like, yeah, you can park here, and then they were towing them. There was some controversy over that. That wasn't so much to do with the predatory towing fees we were talking about. This was a problem with, like, I know in the state of Georgia, they'd ran into some where it was, again, charging. The government felt that they were charging rates for emergency response to remove vehicles from the highways that had been involved in, that were disabled, had been involved in an accident, all those kind of things that weren't justified. So your story that you read in the news article on the private parking removal with people inside, that was a whole other category.
He has another comment here saying there was another news article last week or 2 weeks ago about a towing company in Colorado called Watts Towing Service, something like that, where they are overcharging for impound out of private property like an apartment complex. Look into that. Was very interesting that the state of Colorado changed the laws on that because of what they were doing allegedly.
It's Wyatt's Towing.
Wyatt.
Wyatt's Towing. Colorado Attorney General announces one I got a pop-up thing that I can't get rid of. $1 million settlement with Wyatt Towing must change unfair, deceptive business practices. The investigation found that since 2019, the company towed thousands of vehicles without a valid permit or proper authorization, charged unlawful fees, and illegally kept customer funds, and engaged in deceptive and unfair business practices to discourage Coloradans, didn't know that's what you called them, from exercising their rights under the state's towing law. So they were doing private parking without a permit. They obviously weren't following the rules of private parking. The Towing Bill of Rights also allows customers to retrieve their vehicle if they pay 15% of the towing fees, up to a maximum of $60. The unpaid portion is a debt owed to the towing carrier, and the consumer must sign a PUC form affirming that they owe the pay. Wait, what? Okay, breaking news. Colorado is screwed. So according to this, the AG's office has also said that Watts continued to violate the new tow law and also instituted practices to keep more funds from vehicle sales and reduce the amount returned to vehicle owners or the state, such as driving up storage fees on more valuable services. Okay, so I think I've kind of wrapped my head around this quickly in this very article that we have read live.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. So my understanding to this would be, in Colorado, if a vehicle is impounded, and I don't know if this classifies as all or just for private parking scenarios, that you are supposed to accept, they can retrieve their vehicle if they pay 15% of the towing fees, up to a maximum of $60.
Wow.
Okay. 15% of the towing fees, up to a maximum of $16. The unpaid portion is a debt owed to the towing carrier, and the consumer must sign a PUC form. I feel like this is an IOU form, is what they should have called this, affirming that they owe the payment. Okay. And it sounds like after it's been towed, kind of like with lien holders, if you have to dispose of the vehicle, you pay your bill off first, and then whatever money is left off goes to either the owner of the vehicle or the state. And they were running up their bills to make their amount higher so that the state or the customer wouldn't get the difference. Right? Like that way they would get all of, whatever auction price they got, whatever. That is crazy.
Yeah.
That the 15% is mine. That is mine. That is like, that gets me like, what do you mean? Like if I were to release vehicles in my area, with 15% of the invoice paid.
You go out of business within a month.
Nobody is coming back.
No.
Like, I know the US financial laws are a little different. My camera keeps shifting. I know the US laws are a little bit different, meaning that, you know, financially there's more penalties if you don't stay true to your financial obligations, right? Like, I know they're a lot stricter down there, but like, I would say 60% of my customers, even 80% of the people in which I release that vehicle at 15% are not coming back. They are taking the vehicle. They are leaving me with that IOU. So unless the state is going to, like, there's got to be a backup plan that if you end up being owed and they don't come good for it, that the state must cover that. Like, there has to be. You cannot force a company to release it at a fraction of their invoice without guarantee of compensation if they do everything right and it doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, that seems excessive.
Do you think so? Especially in Ontario here, with all the regulations that have come out, they're trying to. Our capitalistic society is. It's what we got. I don't care if you are for capitalism or against it. It's what we got. It's what we are working with. And the problem with the towing industry as a whole, from the eyes of the government and the consumers, is that we have to charge our customers accordingly because we are for-profit businesses.
Mhm.
With that being said, do you think in the next 20 to 30 years that you're going to see more towing companies no longer becoming companies per se, but become part of the government to where it's a government provided service? And they work that into taxes somehow, and the government just deals with all the accidents on the side of the road to cut out all these inflated prices per se, because they're just sick of us doing our job and wanting to get compensated accordingly for it.
I don't think so, because the reason I say that is you have other problems that, like, you already have, like, who does the highway maintenance? They're for-profit companies,
Yeah.
right? In the province of Ontario, fun fact, um, the provincial police at one point had their own tow truck.
Mm.
Okay, it was a roll tight flatbed
Yep.
that they could, for sensitive, um you know, for fatals where possibly those people trapped inside, whatever the case may be. The province had their own tow truck and they would send out to go.
Mm.
And a lot of times this stuff would end up going to Toronto or something like that, right?
Yep.
They recently got rid of it.
Mm.
The reasoning was, and this is all hearsay, of course.
Yep.
The reasoning, to my understanding, allegedly, was that they did not like exposing their civilian members, because that's who would operate it, would be a civilian member of the police,
Yep.
to the horrors in which they were seeing. Because don't forget,
Oh.
this tight truck doesn't go out for a 2-car MBC, the fender bender, right? This thing is going out to
Or the
a
worst of the
accident
worst.
where a
Yeah.
vehicle caught fire and the guy was trapped inside, and they need to get it back to be able to identify him. The worst of the worst.
Yep.
They did not want to expose their civilian members who were operating these trucks to that kind of thing. So they said,
But
send the towing company, because they're slightly slow already. We will just keep exposing them to it. It was ironic, the reasoning they gave. Allegedly.
That's the big issue, though, is the police, fire, EMS, they all have these resources available to
That
them
was my
to
argument.
deal with PTSD and the appropriate procedures in place for those traumatic events.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying that the towing industry shouldn't have something like that, but most places don't. Why?
Agreed.
Because it costs money. And a fair few towing companies are already running on fairly thin margins, and probably even thinner margins now that all these practices have been thrown on the towing industry. So there just isn't that budget to hire a counselor full time to be able to counsel your drivers when stuff like this happens. Our outlook on that is dark humor and camaraderie between coworkers. That's how
Yep.
we normally get through it. And if
Yep.
you're in a place that you're not super close with your coworkers or your management or whatever, you might slip through the cracks and not have a support system per se to
Mhm.
deal with that kind of shit. And it's
100%.
unfortunately the truth.
Yep.
Right?
So the group with our government funded resources
Yeah.
to help deal with these terrible accidents and these things that you see in the smell of burnt flesh and whatnot and so forth. Like I don't think I'm hurting anyone's feelings by talking about that. I mean, we've all encountered it at one point or another. If we haven't, if you haven't yet and you're listening, I'm sorry, it does happen. Please seek help if you need it. Right. But it's the truth. It's, you know, they went, well, we don't want to subject our members to this. Right. Because they were civilian members. They were not frontline officers driving the, you know, these tow trucks. So they gave it off to the group who doesn't have those resources and did say pretty much deal with it. Right. So no, going back to your original question about, do you see the province just coming, or, you know, the province or federal level, however they want to do it, just coming out and saying, we are going to do it all as a government entity? I don't think so. I'm not saying it's not possible way in the future. I'm just saying we will not see it in our lifetimes or our future kids' lifetimes. I don't think. It is something that I could see, but that'd be like, you know, the government taking over farming and saying, we're going to run all the farms. I mean, they kind of do it the way that they regulate and price everything, but at the same time, they are still for-profit businesses. It's a false for-profit idea, I think. It's a very controlled for-profit, the same way that the towing industry and other industries are slowly becoming. But to say that they will take over, and I don't think they want it. I mean, because yeah, I don't think they want it. I don't think my tax dollars can handle what the government would pay tow operators.
That's the other issue, though, is if they do bring out these, like if they do go ahead with doing that for the highway accidents and the local police department towing needs, you're going to leave the few towing companies that are left to do all the private tows, I'm assuming.
The disabled, because no
I
government is
lock
going
my
to take
keys
that
in my
fully
car,
over.
that kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, the rates are going to have to get inflated even more on the remaining services that these towing companies can provide under the capitalistic society,
100%.
because they lost a good revenue stream of doing accident tows.
Yep.
Right? So I think it would be a very double-edged sword, because if they're trying to curve the rates and the exorbitant fees that we charge, in quotations for the audio listeners, I think it would do the opposite, really.
Well, no, you need different equipment. I don't think it would necessarily drive those rates up to compensate on that stuff. It's just your business structure would be different based on the units that you'd provide. If you were just doing more service calls and actual tows, you would look at more service vehicles. You would do that kind of thing, right? So it's a different. Yeah, I can't say it's not you're gonna up the rate of an unlock by $100 to offset because you're not getting this. You'd restructure your business in a way that accommodates what your volume is like.
Yeah.
Under state law, towing carriers can only charge a notification fee and storage fees if they've notified the owner of a vehicle about a non-consensual tow by certified mail. This makes sense. The investigation found about 2,000 owners of vehicles were charged a notification fee of at least $75 without any documentation by Wyatts that the statutory requirement of notification had been met. In other words, they didn't have records of the sending out the certified mail notifications and charge it anyways. If a tow vehicle was found to be abandoned at a tow lot, a towing carrier can sell the vehicle to recover the cost of the tow and any other fees incurred by the towing operator. State law previously required that towing carriers pay any proceeds to the sale to the Colorado Department of Revenue, which would disperse the money to the owner of the vehicle. Why? Why should the owner who abandoned the vehicle in the towing yard receive any sort of that money?
Yeah.
Like, what is your justification? I got illegally towed. I said, I don't have the money for I guess it's a fine. It is Colorado. Like, is Colorado very, like, progressive in the sense of bleeding heart? Are they? I feel like this kind of gives me the idea on this section, at least. But yeah, the investigation also alleged Wyatt withheld information from people who had their cars towed about the law that allowed them to pay only a portion. I would too. That allowed them to pay a portion of the fees up front and get their vehicle, and for a while required customers to enter into a loan agreement to utilize the towing bill of rights. Um, I
Colorado
again,
has been trending Democrat in the last years due to the rising percentage of young college-educated, suburban, and unaffiliated voters leaning
okay,
to the Democrat side.
so I don't want to get into the whole geopolitical of the whole thing. I just kind of, I wasn't sure where Colorado wasn't, a Texas, wasn't
Hmm.
a, like, fair enough. Yeah, so the company was accused of not telling customers they could pay a portion of their bill to get their vehicle out.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
like, would you willingly, if you had that law, I would, you know, do, like, I would have it posted. I would meet the government requirement minimum to a T,
Hmm.
right? Because that's how you stay out of trouble.
Yep.
Let's be honest. Towing and government requirements are all about finding the minimum on certain things that hurt you and applying the minimums.
Hmm.
So I would not be, hey, I'm here to get my car. Okay, the bill's $200, right?
Hmm.
Okay, well, I don't have $200. Oh, well, that's okay. Like, you can just pay the 15%, which is
Hmm.
$30, and get your car out of here. No problem. Let me help you with that. Let me fill out this form that you need to fill. Let me, like, go suck it.
Yeah.
I am not, unless the law mandates that I have to, which I don't know what the law actually states they have to do, but 100% I'm not telling people if I don't have to.
Hmm.
Like, imagine that, a $200 because it's capped at $60,
Yep.
which is $400 invoice,
Hmm.
right? Anything over $400, you are, your percentage point starts going down.
Yep.
So does the state of Colorado, like, what is the offset? How do they get the rest of it if the customer doesn't pay? And why should the towing company be out of pocket? And now, my understanding is there is an interest they can charge on that.
Mm.
Okay, so but it's still, you're financing a release of a car.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. You're financing the release of a car with an interest rate.
Well, I think we're seeing this a lot more in today's society where credit is becoming more prevalent and things like Affirm and Apple Pay, where you can break things down into installments, is becoming like a norm for a lot of people because not too many people save. Everyone's living paycheck to paycheck with the higher cost of living and bullshit like that. And there is reasons why people stay broke. I'm not saying that there isn't, but there is, like, people don't have safety nets anymore. And if you are in debt, I would highly recommend getting a safety net of at least a month or two of your living expenses put aside and then start tackling more on your debt so you can take care of yourself if something happens.
Well,
And
that's,
if you're
they always said
stupid
you should
and your
you should
car
have.
gets impounded, then at least you have some money to get your car back out of the impound lot. But that's not the world we live in.
Mhm.
So I think the next step for us as towing companies is to offer payment plans with interest at a stupid interest rate like 32.5%. So it's on par with credit cards to say, hey, you got $1,000 towing bill. We can break that down into a 2-year payment plan. There's 32% interest. You're going to end up paying like 12, 13, $1,400 by the time everything's all said and done. Hell, it could even be closer to 2 grand by the time everything's all said and done. And if you stop paying, then we'll put it to collections and then someone will buy it off of us for whatever. And I think that's something that the towing industry is going to have to go through because you can buy now and pay later for furniture, cars, like tiny little purchases. You can do it on Amazon for purchases that are $40. I'm sorry, if you don't have $40 to buy some bullshit off of Amazon, you don't need the bullshit off of Amazon. I'm
True.
sorry, that's my little bit of a rant, but it's finances I think plays a big role in this, and just people don't have the money. And I'm sorry that people don't have the money. A lot of people are in the same boat. But at the end of the day, the company providing the service, regardless if you ask for it or not, has to get compensated. And I think the buy now, pay later strategy, as much as I hate it, it's here to stay and it does have its uses for certain things. think that's something the towing companies are going to have to start implementing to try to get paid, because that's what Colorado's pretty much done, right? They say, well, you pay 15% down, you put 15% down, and then they will charge you interest on the remaining of your bill,
Well,
and
you
you'll
got to
pay it
watch
back
though too,
later.
because part of this complaint against this why it's towing, and one of the ones I didn't read because I didn't think at the time it was going to be important in this conversation, was they were also accused of charging the maximum rate of interest allowed without going up into some other financial section that they would require.
Mhm.
So they are capped on the amount of interest that they are allowed to charge as well.
No.
I don't know. I'm reading the bill now quickly as we do it, so obviously it's not going to be very thorough, and it might be something we have to touch back on
Mhm.
to try and see if I can find what those are, or what happens to a vehicle that they take the 15% and they don't pay it back. Does the
Mhm.
state cover that?
Mhm.
I have not found anything yet to justify that, so
Well,
it is
that's
something we'll have
that's
to
the other
definitely look
thing.
into.
Okay, so you're saying that the state should reimburse you, but then you're
100%.
saying, here's daddy government coming to, if we're going to be a private for-profit company, why don't we do it the same way as, I know banks get bailouts all the fucking time and they're just like another branch of the government, but if, let's say I rack up $1,000 of credit card debt and I don't pay my monthly payments, or I don't pay any of the interest, and that interest is gained to $1,500. Well, that credit card company, it's not worth their time to try to fight me over the $1,500, so they'll just sell it to a debt collector for $1,200, right?
Mhm.
And then that debt collector will try to get you to pay the $1,500 what it actually is, right? So why don't us as towing companies say, okay, government, you screwed us enough. We're not going to rely on you for dealing with the mess that you made. We're just going to deal with it ourselves and go that route, right? So then you are at least getting paid because you're dealing with another for profit business. Is it shady sometimes? Sure, it is. But if that's the route that we're going to go to get payment, that's kind of what we should do.
Well, okay, so I want to um this bill in
Mhm.
Colorado that I'm reviewing, and this whole thing that we were talking about, I think it's important to mention, only applies to concern the rights of a person with ownership interest in a vehicle that has been towed from private property without the person's consent, and in
Mhm.
connection therewith making an appropriation. So this law.
Non-consensual tow.
No, not no, no, no. Don't just say non-consensual tow. Private property removal
Mhm.
non-consensual tows is
Okay.
what this applies to. So I kind of changed my tune once I realized that
Mhm.
they can pay the 15%, take the vehicle. Who should
Yep.
be responsible for that remaining balance? You entered into an agreement with the property owner,
Yep.
right? Like this agreement was not entered into. This is not the case of Ontario where you are getting called by police
Mhm.
to remove something from a highway with no guarantee of payment, and
Mhm.
letting that 15% slide. This is not MBCs. These are
Mhm.
not excessive. I don't want to say excessive because it's a bad word, but these are not towing invoices that are going to be on the higher scale of things. These are
Mhm.
hook and books private property removal.
Yep.
Should the registered owner not pay more than the 15%? 100%, the property owner in which you entered into the agreement to should be responsible. He is the one that they are, I shouldn't say he, they are the
Mhm.
ones that requested that you remove vehicles from their property and entered into an agreement with you,
Mhm.
right? Now,
Mhm.
that's the trick. Nobody's going to start that trend.
No.
Because the first towing company that does that is going to lose their private parking contracts.
Yep.
And what are they going to do? They're going to move to the next company who's not going to do it.
Mhm.
That is where it should be, right? Like it should be that, and we used to do something similar. So we don't do private parking anymore at all.
No. Nope.
Even, and it hurts me sometimes because sometimes it's our good commercial customers
Mhm.
who have a vehicle parked on their property
Mhm.
and we won't remove it. We will only remove a vehicle from private property at the request of the bylaw or the police.
Mhm.
What's ironic is they'll call the police, ask them if they can have the vehicle removed. They will go, yes. And they will say, call this company. And then they call
Mhm.
us and we're like, yeah, we don't do that.
Yep.
The reason is because of the bad, public image. And I think we'd spoke about that before, the bad
Mhm.
public image. So we won't do it, but there is a need for it. Right.
Mhm.
And I know the States, it is a big business.
Mm-hmm.
The US, and especially in the cities, and I'm sure even in the big cities here in Canada, it is a need
Mm-hmm.
to have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a shitty side of the industry to be in. And I don't, I'm not shitting on the operators that operate within it. I'm just saying, like, as a tow operator, for the most part, again, we show up and we help people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could take that same approach with PPIs, right? That's what they're called, PPIs. Is that they're helping the property owners.
Yeah.
They are still helping them, but you are
Well, they're
literally
also helping the fire department if that car's parked on a fire lane.
Yeah, I'd say
Right?
99% of their calls aren't that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll get that one cool one.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they'll get those cool calls, but at the same time, you are pretty much just pissing off every vehicle owner that you touch their vehicle.
Yep.
Nobody is happy to have a PPI. I've never been towed for it. I've done towing for it. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it's fun.
Yeah. Get
Like,
a bit of
sneaking
an
into the
adrenaline
apartment
rush.
complex, getting that thing, getting it out of there, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a shitty side of the industry to be in. It's a necessity, but it's a shitty side. So, looking at, there's still like this Colorado state telling me that I can do that. I get it. It was probably to avoid charges. They had to control it because people were charging what we would charge for an accident to do private property removal. They weren't notifying people. The car would sit there forever. They'd run the invoices up. Like, there's all that kind of stuff. So I get it. I do, in a sense, given the nature of that section, I get it. But as long as it doesn't apply to regular towing, because, like, if these laws start coming in different areas, we talked about the US and all their fights they're having, similar to Ontario. I think we got to start going after the government for predatory practices, because god damn, you cannot control private industry that as hard as you want to control it, right?
Yeah.
But that was
also,
not
thanks, Joe, and fuck you for taking up half of our podcast length.
That was nowhere near the intent of today's show, but
No.
I'm glad we could get into it. That's some of the most organic conversations we'll have on the show, is based on stuff that pops up and ideas.
So if you want to take up half of our show next week, feel free to comment in the comments down below with an interesting topic. Hit us up, send us an email, towinglife@gmail.com, or find us on Facebook. Do a little bleep bloop on one of our posts, or send us a message on Messenger. There's plenty of ways to get a hold of us.
Now we know why I do those reads. My lord. You kind of just reach out to us, okay, guys?
Go, just do it.
Find the buttons.
There's been studies to show if you tell people to do one thing, they're more likely to do it. If you ramble off a bunch of things that you want them to do, they'll do none of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a fact?
Yeah.
Is that why I do
read
nothing
it on the internet.
Is that why I do nothing when my wife gives me a list of 7 things, but if she just asks me to do one thing, I'll go do it?
Yep. Yeah, because you feel just overwhelmed. Like, it's a daunting task when they say these are the 18 things you got to do to get to your goal, and you're like, wow, that's a lot of things. But if you just break your goals down into a lot smaller steps, like, make your bed in the morning. Okay, well, I achieved that goal, right? And you get a little dopamine hit because you achieved something and you completed something. You set your goals small to slowly work towards your bigger overarching goal. So if I say, please like this video today, and then next week I say, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, it might actually, count up to something.
We're doomed as a society if we need to break hitting your goals into small little chunks that these sensitive little generation can swallow without, choking.
No, it's not that at all. Fuck you for that. No, it's the human condition. No, it's the human fucking condition. If you do smaller things, they're easier to obtain. Like, if I say to you, I want you to go from nothing, you probably have, like, let's just say $5,000 in your bank account. I want you to go up and start a $10 million towing company with nothing else. That's a daunting task, even with your knowledge. But if I say, I want you to go out and get your towing equipment for doing service calls and start doing service calls, well, that's a lot easier attainable goal, right? Aside from starting up the actual business and all the paperwork stuff, you can go out and you can buy some of the equipment, and then you can get the ball rolling and you can snowball. It's always that snowball effect. When people say, I'll use me as an example. I want to start up a farm. I've got 105 acres. Okay. I want 35 head of cattle. I want to be able to stay at home and raise a family on my farm. That's a great goal, but that's a long-term goal. I
Mhm.
can do it on a year-to-year basis to where I can see cause and effect over that course of the year. Okay, I want to build a chicken tractor so I can get 30 chickens and start selling them, and then I can start eating some of my own meat. Well, that's a more attainable goal. Okay, next year I want to start putting up some fences. Okay, and I start putting up these fences and I get fencing done. Okay, well now that's opened the opportunity for me to start getting cattle, right?
Okay.
And it just snowballs.
I agree with you on that. Where I was laughing at was the reference of set yourself like make your bed today. Like
Well,
setting
if you've
yourself
ever listened to Jordan Peterson, it's a
no.
good way if you are in a slump, and
Okay.
a lot of people are, you're like, oh, day to day is very mundane, just bullshit. You're just going through life as you're just floating by, right?
Okay.
If you wake up in the morning and you make your bed and you can actually say, I've done something within your first 10 minutes of being awake, it sets yourself up as a better mood for the rest of the day because you've already accomplished something. You know you should do something, you've accomplished that goal, and it's easier to start accomplishing other things because when you wake up in your day and you're like, okay, well, I gotta do the dishes, I gotta do laundry, I gotta do this, and you gotta do that, and you gotta do the whole laundry list of things of
Mhm.
generic humans got to do in the day. A lot of people, new people, old people, can get overwhelmed with that list of 7 things, like you said. But
I
when you
think a
get
lot of
a
newer people, we'll call them newer people,
like younger
um,
people,
get newer people
yeah,
get a little overwhelmed a little quicker on it. Like I
yeah,
said, I'm not trying to shit on your strategy for setting goals. I think
hmm
goals in life, goals in business, goals are absolutely important, and
hmm
achieving your goals are one thing,
yeah,
right? Like that is how you get forward in life. I
hmm
100% agree. Um, I like I said, I was just shitting on the softer generation that's got to be broken up into so small of tasks, right? How many of these younger generations, these younger operators that you have to like literally focus on one tiny little thing at a time because they get overwhelmed,
hmm
right? Like I'm shitting on that side of it. I'm shitting on the newer generation, and the same as my generation was in comparison to my father's, and his
hmm
generation was in comparison to his father, right? This is a trend. I had this debate with him, and actually, I probably have this debate again after today's show about him with him tonight for Father's Day when I see him.
hmm
You should
Be
have it at
rude
yours;
not
it'd be
to.
fun. Nah,
Yeah.
you don't know me and my father's relationship. Okay, it's already broken. Let's let's just beat it up a little bit more. Um, but no, I was like I said, the how small of pieces they have to be cut up into to not affect their fragile thought process or feelings behind it on how small you got to break up some of the goals. Goals are important, but let's be honest, like we are very softer to a lot of things. Back in the day it was figure it out, right? I had this conversation with my general manager not long ago
hmm
where um it was like, has this operator been shown how to do this? And I don't remember what it was. It was something fairly simple of a task. Like it wasn't like a C can. It was, I don't remember what it was. And he goes, have they been shown how to do that? And I said, no, not that I remember. I'm sure they can figure it out. Well, that is not fair to put on somebody to expect them to figure it out without being shown.
hmm
And that hit a nerve with me because as much as, yes, training is as valuable as ever. Like training is required. You cannot hold hands through every type of scenario. Meaning, if I've shown you how to do a scissor lift, you should be able to figure out how to do a forklift. You know what I mean? Like if I've given you those basics, you should be able to figure out that situation.
hmm
Ironically, the next day I had to go do, I think we talked about the motorcycle in the quarry.
hmm
And when we recovered it, we strapped it down to the wheel lift sideways, hung it off the boom like we've done bikes before. And I remember I sent the picture to my general manager and he goes, "Ah, nice." I said, "Yeah, you know who taught me that? Nobody. We figured it out."
hmm
Like the towing industry, as much as, I think we go too far to the one side on it where we don't train people at all
hmm
and just send them out and get them to figure it out. There has to be that balance, right? These new guys, you literally need to hold their hands through a lot of stuff,
hmm
right? Is that for the better or for the worst? Like, is it, yes, they're getting more training. So you could view that as a positive, but at the same time, they're not figuring anything out on themselves because they've had their handheld, I believe, through everything. And I've got a couple operators that are still the exception to that, right? I had a kid not long ago. He's a couple months in. I'm at a body shop checking out a call or picking up something. And I happen to see one of our trucks in the backyard. So I'm like, I'm going to go over and check him out, see how he's doing, right? I go into the back. It's a little pickup truck missing a whole wheel, right? The whole right front assembly is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's a couple months in, so still fairly green. I think we can agree. And he's got this thing jacked up, put up on blocks, skate put under it, like textbook hookup for a new guy. And did it all without asking any questions. Now, he was shown it once. He was shown it once on a rear wheel, right? Or he was shown once on a, just playing around in the yard. But he was not shown in that specific scenario. He had the mind to take it and go, I've learned this before, something similar. How do I apply it in this situation?
Yep.
And I think that, that's what makes a good operator. That's what makes these new guys. You look distracted. You were reading something.
Yeah.
I swear to God, if it's more motivational videos, I'm cutting your feed off.
No, but it's going back to how you're saying everything's got to be broken down into small, attainable goals. So the average house price in 1980, this is just a quick little, I got 4 tabs open in Canada, right? The graphs are approximately 75,000 for a starter home in 1980. And in 1989, the average house price was $150,000, right?
Okay, so it doubled.
Then you go, right? The average household salary in 1980 was $55,000.61. For an individual was $23,018, right?
Okay, because dual income.
So
I mean,
you could have
wait. What year was this?
1980.
How many dual income households were there in the 80s?
Well, it was becoming more prevalent after World War II. After World War II, because they brought all the females into the factories, it became more prevalent, right? You got into the suburban lifestyle, yada, yada, yada.
It's just so not towing related.
I know it's not towing related, but it kind of sheds a bit of a light on certain things. Anyways, so average house price is $75,000, average income, dual income household, $55,000. You could have that house paid off in like 10 years, 5 years, if you wanted to, yada, 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 right? Easy math.
Okay.
2024, average selling price of a home in Ontario, $893,200, right?
That's not fair. Toronto blows everything up.
Okay. Even around me in smaller areas, a new townhouse, 600, 700, right? It's not cheap.
I think so.
Average household income in Canada, an average annual salary in Canada in 2023 was $64,850. That's going to take you a lot longer. So, and the average house price was 2 years of your salary. 1980, 55,000. Average house price, 75,000. In less than 2 years, you make more, right? In less than 2 years, you had enough money to fully pay off that house without your living expenses.
Yeah.
In 2024, you're making $64,850. Well, I'm going to do some quick math if you want to.
Oh, no. TowManG is doing math. Lord, save us all. Man, I have definitely hit a nerve with this one with you.
That you have divided by 64, 850.
So, like, I get what you're saying. It's going to be like 12 years.
So, yeah, it's almost 14 years if all your income went straight to the house, which isn't possible.
No,
right?
Of course.
So the goals have gotten a lot larger, right? To own a home now, you got to have a lot of wealth behind you, a lot of savings, or you're going to be paying for it for the rest of your life, right? So the goals have just looked so unattainable, right? When you look at home ownership, which is just a big idea in this, it's very hard to motivate yourself because that goal just seems so far off. To where if you break things down, okay, well, this year I want to save $5,000. I want to put $5,000 into a 401k. I want to put $5,000 into a retirement fund. I want to do whatever. In a year to save $5,000, it's a lot easier than saying, I want to buy a house this year, right? So it's easier to motivate yourself because it's a more attainable goal, right? That's the saying of keep your expectations low to avoid disappointment.
Mhm.
That's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. Because if you say, I want to be a millionaire next year, it's very hard to attain that. But if you've broken, okay, well, instead, I want to be a millionaire, how am I going to get there? Okay, well, there's a 10 step. I can see myself doing it in 10 different steps. So you break that down. And every time you hit a step in that goal, you're still working for that $1 million, but you can say, okay, well, I made $5,000 or I saved $5,000 this month and or this year, and next year, okay, well, I was able to save five last year. What if I save 10 this year, right? And then you save 10 that year, and it just makes it easier to once again snowball yourself into that end goal, right?
Okay, so the only way that I can save this so that you understand that we can keep this show related towards towing, because anyways, it is no, the towing industry has faced the same problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Average price of a tow truck back in the 1980s, 1970s,
Mm-hmm.
versus basic rate of a tow
Mm-hmm.
was a lot closer of a margin.
Mm-hmm.
You look at price of tows now compared
Mm-hmm.
to 1980s, they haven't increased much,
No.
right? They've barely increased. We've seen some guys with rate sheets from back when you go, we're like $20 more,
Yeah.
and a tow truck will cost north of 200.
Yep.
A tow truck price has increased
Mm-hmm.
100% multiple times, right? Like threefold,
Mm-hmm.
and yet the price of tows have increased 40%, 30%,
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. So and it's inflation is real,
Yep.
right? And the market can't keep up. But then at the same time, you can't go, well, tow trucks need to make more money. Like, what is your point on this though? That people should make more money, or that things should
No.
cost less money?
No.
Because
So
I
what
mean,
I'm
there's no nice solution to this.
this is kind of calling back to what I was talking about earlier on the show of why financing small purchases have become so prevalent, right?
Right. Because
You
yeah, and people are stupid though. People
it,
are like, I can't afford $60, but I can afford $5 a month with interest for you know what I mean, 8 months, and end up paying,
exactly.
yeah,
Well,
maybe more than
it's
8 months. There'd be like 12, but
that's the thing is everything with the same day or next day shipping, everything's instant gratification, right? I go to
Mhm.
McDonald's, I buy bullshit, right? I get that reward,
I buy
right?
bullshit.
Well, that's what it is. You stop at a convenience store, you get gas, and you go inside and you get bullshit. With you, it's sunflower seeds. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I'm a
Really.
sucker for sunflower seeds.
Exactly. Well, how much money could you save if you didn't get your sunflower seeds? It's going to be negligible, like not that much money over the course of a year. But if you do that with that Snickers that you got, or you do that with whatever bullshit that you don't really need and live more minimalistically, you'd be able to have a savings and you'd be
But
able
that's
to cash roll yourself instead of going into debt to get new things that you need, right? If you had a couple of $1,000s set aside for emergencies, and you get your car impounded or you need a new set of brakes, right? Instead of, well, I need my car to get to work. And if I don't have brakes on my car, then I can't work. And then it's just a downward spiral. You're like, well, I guess I got to put it on credit. Well, that's only setting yourself up for failure because you're going to have to pay that back with interest.
you know what
What do
we're
you,
gonna do. I have a
what?
solution.
Okay.
We are going to send G to the great state of Colorado. He can become an official Coloradan, which is new information to me today. And he will come around to your towing companies and give his life lessons to any customer who decides to 15% pay and finance the rest of their vehicle out, and explain to them why it is a bad idea, so that you can not end up like Wyatt's Towing. You can offer them the services. You can say, you know what, you can pay 15% of your invoice and pay the rest later. The bad side is you got to go sit in a room with this motherfucker for 45 minutes and listen to him explain to you why you are making bad life decisions and need to smarten up. That is what we are going to do. So if there is any towing company in the great state of Colorado that would like to have Mr. TowManG as their 15% refuser, we call him, or negotiator,
Yeah.
that'll be the deal. 15%, you finance the rest, but you got to sit 45 minutes with this guy so that he can explain to you George Peterson or whoever the hell he talked about,
Jordan.
and the economics of the working class and how it directly affects you.
I will
So
make a one simple plug. If you are interested in finances and you do want to better yourself,
please tell
Caleb
me you're not
Hammer.
selling a help book.
I'm not selling a help book. Well, he does offer shit, but just his free videos on YouTube. Caleb Hammer, he does financial audits. He's out of Austin, Texas. if you want to be on a show, you can be on a show. And he just goes through people's shitty fucking life
I've seen this
situations.
guy. They go like, yeah, I've got a car
Yeah,
payment of this. I make this
yeah.
much
And he
money. And
breaks
he's
out
an
a
old white
budget.
haired guy. Yeah.
Well, he's not an old white hair guy. He's a young kid. He's like 30.
Oh, maybe I've seen some other version, some other guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Caleb Hammer on YouTube. Look him up. He's funny fucking shit.
Well, this
Anyways.
episode absolutely got away from us, and I apologize to our listeners
We
who
didn't
don't
touch
want
on
to hear about
anything that
Nope.
we wanted to talk about. We
Nope.
got if it fits, it ships for next week.
Yep.
Road etiquette.
Yep.
We've got a Facebook post that's probably 3 months old at this point if we actually touch to it. We've got your stupid life decisions of doing 3,000 kilometers in 3 days. Yeah, we got a lot of shit that we got to talk about next week.
So be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Towing Life podcast, where we aim to go 3 for 3 in 3 weeks in a row without issue. On behalf of myself and my wonderful co-host, Mr. TowManG, we thank you for coming out for another episode, and we cannot wait to see you again next week. Take care.
Toodles.
This is the dumbest episode we've ever done.
I liked it. It was good.
Of course you did, because it doesn't do anything about towing.
Yeah, it's fine.
No, it's not. I would like to make you point your eyes to the top of the screen here, sir.
And what's behind me, but we've done a lot of videos that have all focused around the towing industry, which is good and bad in a way.
Because that's what our fucking show is about.
I know it's what our fucking show is about, but it's good to get off topic sometimes. Some of our best performing shows have been off topic shows. Because as much as our fan base likes towing, they're also here for us.
I think my joke at the end absolutely wrapped that fucking perfectly.
Which one?
The Colorado thing. Like, we're going to send you to Colorado.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you can take the 15%, but you got to sit with this motherfucker for 45 minutes and listen to this bullshit.